Welcome to the debate. It is 2026, and, well, the bill has come due. OpenAI and Anthropic, the pioneers who really started this whole revolution, are staring at a massive debt wall. The question isn't just about innovation anymore, it's about survival. Can they stay solvent against cash-rich giants like Google and Meta? My stance is yes. The path is narrow, I'll grant you, but by locking down high-stakes sectors like healthcare and defense, they can survive on premium margins.
And I see the exact opposite. I think the moat, that defensive advantage they've been relying on, is, for all intents and purposes, gone. Between the commoditization of models and the flood of open source and Chinese development, the performance gap has just collapsed. And without that gap, the economics of being a pioneer, they simply don't work.
That is the pessimistic view, certainly. But let's look at the strategy here. Everyone knows the era of ChatGPT for everything is over for them. To pay off the debt, they are pivoting. The consensus strategy is effectively becoming defense contractors and specialized medical device manufacturers.
A boutique pivot.
A necessary pivot, yeah. If you are, say, the U.S. military or the Mayo Clinic, you are not buying off the rack. You need the absolute best model, verified and secure. The pioneers are betting that even a small edge in reasoning capability commands, well, monopoly price in those rooms.
That strategy hinges on one fatal assumption, that they have a meaningful edge. You're comparing companies that are bleeding cash to service debt against Google and Meta, who have, infinite runways and existing distribution. But the real killer is the data. The superiority you're talking about, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Superiority is relative, though.
No, I think superiority is measurable, and the metrics are brutal. Let's just look at ARCAG2. This is the gold standard for general reasoning. 2 years ago, the gap between the number one model and the runner-up was 30 points. Today, it's 8.9.
A drop? Sure.
It's not just a drop, it's a compression. Look at coding, the bread and butter of AI revenue. On SWE Bench Verified, the gap between first place and 10th place fell from 40 points to 12. And in the chatbot arena, which measures how humans actually feel about the output, the difference between the top two models is less than 0.7%. That is statistical noise, not a competitive moat.
Okay, I concede the gap is narrowing, but you are dismissing the value of that margin. In high-stakes environments, good enough is a liability. Take humanity's last exam, the hardest benchmark we have. The gap there is about 6 points. You see a small number, I see the difference between a correct cancer diagnosis and a malpractice suit. In defense or surgery, that 0.7% edge is the entire product. They don't need to be 30 points ahead, they just need to be consistently better than the commodity.
But you're ignoring the market reality outside of that top 1%. We are seeing 70% of the enterprise space, the mid-tier, being eaten alive by Chinese developers and open-source startups. If the model performance is practically identical, why would a mid-sized logistics company pay OpenAI a premium when they can run a llama derivative for a fraction of the cost?
They wouldn't. And my argument is that the pioneers should let that market go. Let the open-source community fight over the low-end, commoditized scraps. The pioneers can't compete on volume against free. They have to become the Ferrari of intelligence. Low volume, extreme performance, massive margins.
But Ferrari doesn't have Toyota-level debt obligations. That is the crux of it. Google can afford to lose money on AI just to keep you in their ecosystem. OpenAI and Anthropic simply cannot. If they lose 70% of the market to commoditization, I just don't believe the defense and healthcare contracts are enough to service their capital expenditures.
It is a race between their debt maturity and their ability to institutionalize. If they embed themselves deeply enough in the Pentagon or the NHS before the cash runs out, they survive. They don't need to win the whole internet anymore. They just need to win the critical infrastructure.
It's a precarious position when the human-avow coding gap is under 3%. When your product differentiation is that low, the company with the biggest bank account usually wins the war of attrition. The pioneers cannot outspend Google when their product is barely distinguishable.
So we're watching financial gravity wrestle with innovation speed. It is going to be a fascinating year to see which force breaks first.
Indeed. When the moat fills with sand, you better hope your castle walls are high enough.
Thank you for listening to the debate.